Welcome to Bloody Buffalo. This is Jay Snodgrass, and today's episode is called Blood on the Headlines. November 27th, 1909 was a slow news day in Buffalo. One of the leading headlines was Fights for His Life with Infuriated Baboon, imported from Portland. Quote, a trainer employed by an animal show fought desperately for half an hour yesterday with a pink-tailed baboon that attacked him in the cage. A score of monkeys kept up a shrill screaming during the fight, and this finally attracted the attention of other employees who rescued Wilson. He is in serious condition. Another headline, Dog Meat, Latest Delicacy in Paris. Several applications for authority to establish slaughterhouses for dogs in Paris, the flesh to be sold as food for human consumption. Dr. de Kermil, president of the French Anti-Vivisection Society, points out, however, that the dog is very subject to excitement, which may easily produce toxic effects, as in fact is the case with beeves. The key concern here is that animals who die in moments of terror will have heightened levels of adrenaline, which will render the meat tough and flavorless. So French chefs are cautioned to serve only bon vivants. But this kind of humdrum day leaves open space on the front page for fascinating little stories. Strohl insane, authorities think. Application probably will be made Monday morning to examine into the mental condition of William Strohl, the baker who planned a wholesale assassination of men he considered to be his enemies, and succeeded yesterday in killing the first one on the list, Franz Stendt, who had been his friend and companion for years, shooting him in the newspaper reading room at the Buffalo Library. 2 notes written in German were found on Strohl when he was searched. One of them was a list of men he had marked for death, and it was headed with the name of Stendt. Second on the list was Dr. J.H. Wild. Would you shoot the doctor now? Asked Assistant District Attorney Moore as the 2 men sat facing one another. I wouldn't think twice over it. Give me a chance, replied Strohl. Strohl became acquainted with Dr. Wild when he was a student by being a boarder in the home of Dr. Wild's mother. Strohl's motive was revenge. Quote, Strohl said, in a rambling way, that Dr. Wild had made a hole in his neck and had drawn out a nerve extending the whole length of his spine, and also that the doctor had removed all of his intestines without breaking the skin. William Strohl knew that something was wrong with him. Today, he might be diagnosed with a delusional or dissociative disorder. But in 1909, this German immigrant had no such sophisticated labels to explore, so he diagnosed himself as the victim of a bizarre experiment. Perhaps he first noticed the problem when, freshly arrived in America, he took up lodging at Mrs. Wild's boarding house. Her son was a medical student at the time, keenly interested in alternative therapies and pseudoscience, and took some peculiar interest in this German baker. Strohl reported that a group of mad scientists, including Franz Stendt and young John Wild, tied him to a table one night to perform a horrific surgical experiment. Through an incision in his neck, they drew out precious spinal nerves, and although he could find no scar, they had also removed his intestines. This procedure, he believed, had left him partially debilitated at both ends. Presumably, the symptoms had something to do with bowel movements and motor control. But whatever coordination he lost as a baker, he was still capable with a revolver. Strohl entered the Buffalo Public Library with 2 guns. This was before the library installed its metal detectors and hired security personnel. Locating Franz Stendt, who according to the police report was 55 years old and also somehow 70 years old, Strohl blasted him through the back of the head. Then he fired a couple of warning shots to scare off a curious custodian and bolted out onto Clinton Street. Patrolman John Hannon heard the shots and pursued, firing wildly at Strohl, who turned and put a bullet in the officer's left arm. The report does not specify whether Hannon was right or left-handed, but if he was a lefty, then Strohl must have been an excellent marksman. Other officers joined the pursuit, and common citizens assisted by heroically hurling bricks and bowling pins from their rooftops as Strohl darted down an alley. It's a bit surprising that they would do this in plain sight of police officers, since bowling was, at the time, illegal in the city of Buffalo. Some even charged into the fray, and officers had to club several of these improvisatory vigilantes to get to Strohl when he stopped to reload. The Miranda warning, "You have the right to remain silent," etc., had not yet been invented, so Strohl spoke his mind openly to the arresting officers. "I would have blown you all to hell if you hadn't gotten back at me." In his pocket, they found a list of names, several of them followed by, quote, "and his crowd," implying that Strohl's planned killing spree intended several massacres. But instead, he was sent to lodge in a new boarding house, the Mattawan Insane Hospital for Criminals, where mad scientists could experiment on him in a safe, controlled environment. What might Franz Stendt have been perusing in the library's newspaper room before his brains splattered over the page? The Buffalo Evening News of November 26 contains some thought-provoking possibilities. Perhaps it was a sad suicide. Buffalo nurse probably went over the falls. Or the even sadder suffrage piece, grand, feminine sob for the ballot. Maybe he was reading one of the ads, untrimmed hats and ostrich feathers at remarkably low prices, Rango corset belts for stout people, or men's fine underwear considerably underpriced. But even the most cursory glance over the front page instantly reveals the catchiest headline: "Pleasure Party Ends in Death," about some drunken wedding guests who capsized a boat on Lake Muskegon. Then his cerebral tissues soaked the November 26th paper, and his name splashed across the next day's front page under the headline, "Blew Out Victim's Brains Without Warning." The story, "Strohl Insane, Authorities Think," made page 5 of the Buffalo Evening News, and the article makes a fairly strong case for why authorities might think this, but also leaves open the possibility that Strohl was not crazy, which is the more interesting story. Perhaps he really had been the subject of this bizarre experiment run by bakers, butchers, and an ambitious yet unorthodox young psychiatric medical student. This is Jay Snodgrass. This has been Welcome to Bloody Buffalo, and I look forward to joining you again for our next episode once I figure out what it is.